welcome. This is the second of our prayer spaces sessions. And as we said last time, those of you with us a month or so ago, you'll know that the purpose of these seminars, discussions, interviews is to host the best possible prayer spaces that we can together. It'd be great if everyone else can mute so that we don't get lots of extra noises in the background. You may have watched Boris half an hour ago. The announcement that schools are going to be opening, it seems, on the 8th of March is good news. And certainly our hope is that means that the summer term could be full of prayer spaces for us. So this could be a really timely session with some encouragement for how we can crack on with prayer spaces. Tonight we're going to do, there's 3 interviews. We're going to interview Joanna Jones from London, she's a chaplain in London. We're going to interview Lizzie Demetriou, who works for Off the Fence in Brighton and Hove. And then we've got a pre-recorded interview that we did earlier today with Beth Rookwood, and you'll hear more from those 3. To get the best out of tonight, please use the chat. Some of you have already started posting in there. Please do chat amongst yourselves in the chat, post questions, comments, ideas perhaps that we could use for future sessions, just things that come to mind. Please use the chat. We'd much prefer to be in a room together having coffee and conversation. We don't have that facility, but we do have this chat, so let's use that as best we can. You might want to take some notes as well. I've got a notebook here in front of me. I'm looking forward to the interviews, looking for some pearls of wisdom. And then just to say, after the 3 interviews, we are going to use, we're going to drop into some breakout rooms. Ebony's going to organise that. I'm really aware, you and I, we've been on lots of Zoom calls already. Some people love breakout rooms, some people don't. More often than not, they're a really good opportunity to actually have some conversation, whereas in a big room, we can't do it. So even if you're not a huge fan, please can I encourage you, in 30 minutes time when we split off into breakout rooms, give it a go. You never know, you might make a lifelong friend, and I'm sure that you will learn something. That part of our desire is that we get to learn from one another. The breakout rooms are not going to be recorded, so you don't need to worry about that, and it'd be great if you don't mind popping your video on when you're in that breakout room. So just before I hand over to Tim, what I'd love to do, Ebony, is it possible to switch back to gallery view? Is it possible to do that?
Yeah, I've just done that.
Brilliant, I've got it as well. I'd love us to pray just really quickly now for a minute. And to do that, what I'd like to encourage you to do is just swipe across on your screen and find a name, ideally someone you've never seen before, someone whose name you don't know. Have a look on your screen and choose one person, whether they've got their video on or not tonight. Choose one of the names on that screen. Just give you a moment to find a person. So hopefully everyone's chosen. And then just for a few seconds now, I want us to wait on the Lord. I want us to ask God just for a word of encouragement, maybe a Bible verse. We're not actually going to say them. We don't have the time to actually say them to one another. But I want us to pray a prayer while we are muted, so we don't actually listen to one another, but pray a prayer of blessing or speak a scripture or whatever it is that you feel that you would love to bless that person with. A good friend of mine says, let's pray our best prayers for one another. Let's pray the best that we possibly can for someone. So is that okay? Has everyone got a person in mind? Give me a little nod if you're ready. Excellent. So for 30 seconds now, the person that you've got on your screen in front of you that you've chosen, let's pray some blessing for them, pray encouragement for them. And we'll do that while we're muted, and then we'll move on with the interview. So let's do that right now. I'm going to mute myself as well. Fantastic. Thank you, everyone. We're colleagues, we're partners, we're co-conspirators in this thing together. So I ask for the Lord's blessing upon each one of you tonight in the name of Jesus. And on that note, can I hand over to the most excellent Timothy Abbott at Ebony? Could you pinpoint Tim, and off he goes.
Great. Hello, everyone. Right. Well, I've had the privilege of chatting to a couple of people this week about prayer spaces they've been running during the lockdown era, which we hope is soon behind us. And the first of those is Joe Jones. So, Joe, I'd like to unmute yourself. Yay. Now, first of all, Joe, what's your role? Who are you, and where do you work?
Yeah. So I work in the Kensington area, which is part of the Diocese of London. So it covers a lot of West London. And I'm part of the Bishop of Kensington's staff team. He's got his own staff team, which works just in the Kensington area. And I'm my full title, it's a bit long, it's the Kensington Area Bishops Schools Chaplain. So I kind of work on behalf of the bishop, supporting schools. In particular, there are 7 Church of England secondary schools in the area, so I particularly work with them, and most of them have chaplains. And then the other part of my role is helping churches really to support schools and sort of encourage them in their schools work.
Wow, brilliant. Now, over the last few months, you've run a couple of prayer spaces in schools. What was that? There was one about to do with bags. Just very briefly, what was that one about?
Yes, so that was in a school called Chelsea Academy, which is one of the Church of England schools. And they, I think, like a lot of schools, the pressure of space, because they've had to fill every available space because of social distancing and keeping everyone in bubbles. So they didn't have a physical space that they could have a prayer space in, but they were happy to have bags. So they, together with the chaplain, we organised 360 bags. So that was one for all of year 7 and all of year 8. And a couple of the local churches helped, they helped pay for the bags, which was fantastic. But they also helped to make them up, all COVID secure. They were quarantined and everything like that. And then the bags were delivered kind of in lessons. So it wasn't a physical space, but each pupil got a bag, and the chaplain and I was able to go in one day. We kind of led them through the activities. And the good thing about bags was they got to take them home. So hopefully they made their way home and they could hang on to them.
Okay, I'm asking the question that 52 other people are asking. What was in the bags?
So, I mean, these were all ideas really mainly from the Great Prayer Spaces in Schools website. So they had a wooden heart. They had a tea light, a kind of electronic tea light, because they weren't allowed to light real tea lights. They had a ribbon. And they had, I've gone blank. It'll come back to me. They had a little card that had notes about each activity. And that also had a message from the bishop, which was really nice, a kind of Christmas message. And, we're praying for you. And I've remembered, they had a little box, a thank you box. So it was all really simple. I think we worked out the cost of each bag and the contents was about 80p a bag.
Wow.
So they were all things that you could kind of buy quite easily online.
Oh, that's fabulous. How did that go down? Did you get any good feedback from it?
Yeah, I think, I mean, the chaplain delivered most of the lessons. I was only able to go in on one day, but the day I went, it was something different. They enjoyed getting something tangible. The lessons that I was in on, they responded really well. They opened up. I mean, obviously, we don't know what happened to the bags when they left school, but we were really hoping and praying that they'd make their way home, that families, carers, other people in the home, might pick it up and have a look and, what's this? What did you do with this? So that I think I felt that was one of the big value of the bags. And I think the chaplain said they really liked, they were quite nice, a little bit more expensive, but they were kind of quite pretty cloth bags. So I think they quite liked getting something that it looked quite nice as well, and just hopefully that it was something, something given to them. They don't know the bishop, but he'd written them a message that somebody was thinking about them and praying for them, importantly.
Great. Now, after that huge success, you also done you supported quite a different prayer space as well, didn't you? So what was the second one?
So that was a school called the Green School for Girls, which is in Isleworth in West London. That was fortunate because they've got quite a big chapel, and the chapel wasn't being used for other things, which I know in some schools, if they have chapels or halls, they've had to be used for lessons. So there was a space where it could be. So the school were happy to have a physical prayer space in the chapel. Because of COVID restrictions and logistics, it was just for one year group. So it was for year 7, which was what the school suggested. And because the year group was a bubble, it meant that when they came into the prayer space, they could just sort of mix normally. Myself and the chaplain, we did it together. We, had our masks on and kind of kept our distance, but the pupils could mix. We did, it was able to be quite spread out. We did try to be as mindful as we could of things. So we made sure that there weren't things that lots of people touched the same thing. So for example, they all had a pen, that nobody else touched that pen. Once they'd done it, they put the pen in another box, and we wiped everything, sanitized everything afterwards. And where there were activities that involved touching, there was enough for one each. So they only touched one ribbon, one piece of card. But because of being a bubble, the school said that the children didn't have to keep a distance from each other. They could gather around an activity if they wanted to.
Right. And how many activities did you manage to get into the chapel, and how many students could you squeeze in at a time?
So we had 8 stations, and they came half a form at a time. So there were about 15 pupils at a time. They didn't have very long. That was probably one big difference to normal, because of again, lots of you will know the timetables were different in COVID, because they've had to kind of rejig things. So that was, it had to be very managed. They could only come for about 20 minutes, and there wasn't really any flexibility. They couldn't kind of pop back at another time, but each group came and they had about 20 minutes. And so they probably didn't get round all 8, but I think they probably had time to do at least half of them. So we just, after we'd given a quick introduction, we just let them choose what they wanted to go to.
So what was the response like? What were students saying? What was the school saying?
I think it's fair to say it took the chaplain and I by surprise, actually, how kind of open they were. So they were year 7, so they hadn't known each other very long. Obviously, they'd only started their school in COVID times. From what we could tell, most of them hadn't experienced a prayer space before. So we thought they might be quite reticent, and because they didn't have very long, it might just be a very brief interlude, but it was, they were very willing to engage, very willing to share. Obviously, we didn't have time to talk in depth with all of them, but we had a short feedback time at the end. And to be honest, I think they could have gone on for a lot longer. A lot of them said they wanted longer and they didn't want to go back to their lessons. If I'm honest, I think they also just enjoyed having a break, from maths or whatever it was. But no, they were really open. Quite a lot of emotion came out, and that we were prepared, I think, but there was probably more than we thought, given that they only had a short time. Quite a lot of them talked about loss. A lot of them talked about they just liked having some space to kind of think about how they were feeling, and to be able to share that, whether it was writing something down or doing something kind of tactile. And the chaplain had created a simple written feedback sheet, which I thought we wouldn't have time to do, but it was actually very helpful because there was quite a lot of emotion and quite a lot of things came up. It meant that she then had some notes that she could use for following up. Obviously, it was all kept, kept securely, kept confidential, but it did mean, because we did have children talking about relatives who died, very close relatives in some circumstances, and children where there was a lot of quite powerful emotion that came out. So I think it was, on the whole, it was a really positive response, but it was also, it felt like quite a deep response for the limited amount of time they had.
Finally, in the last minute, really, I suppose, what did you learn from it? What advice would you pass on to others? What wisdom would you share as a result of having done that?
I think I'd say I know how
both
tough
of
it
those,
is.
both of those prayer spaces, really.
Yeah, but I know how tough it is for schools just to kind of keep going the day to day. So I completely understand that a lot of them, it possibly feels too much to think about a prayer space. But I think what I learned is it can be quite simple and it can still be really powerful. I was surprised, particularly with the physical one that I've just described. So these are year 7, so they're 11, 12, how sort of excited they were by quite simple things. So one of the activities had a tent up because it was thinking about people that don't have a home. And they were so excited about sitting in the tent. It was, it kind of took, so I think I would say it can be simple but powerful and effective. It doesn't have to take too much effort on everybody's part and sort of bringing in loads and loads of different resources. I think the other thing was just the value of giving them the space, particularly after such a sort of turbulent period that we've been through. It did feel a bit like you were taking the lid off a kind of fizzed up bottle, and it was just letting them express themselves. And one of the quotes, one of the quotes from that one was, "I got to express myself."
Brilliant.
Jo,
and we need to
yeah
pause at that point, but I think that's a really important point to end on, actually. Taking the lid off, and I suspect that if we get to do prayer spaces during the summer, we're going to see quite a lot of that. So thank you very much for that very condensed but excellent kind of overview of what you did, and thank you, bless you. Now we're going to the other person that we asked is Lizzie from Brighton. So Lizzie, if you'd like to unmute yourself. Hiya.
Hello.
This is Lizzie Demetriou from Off the Fence. So Lizzie, just a quick introduction for people about who you are, where you work, what you do.
Thank you. So I'm Lizzie and working down in Brighton and Hove for a Christian charity called Off the Fence. The charity does a few things, but we have a schools team, and so we do in a normal time we would run about 15 prayer spaces in a year, primary and secondary, in faith schools and non-faith schools, wherever we'll have them. So
and this year.
And this year we haven't.
You are not alone. Right. But so how are you all doing as a schools team then? How's that?
Yeah, we're okay. We're all very separate. We're working from home, separate from each other. So we're missing actually collaborating and hanging out as a team, and we're missing being in school. We're doing lots of filming and recording and learning new skills, but we're missing the kids.
Hopefully summer term bring it on very soon. Now but you were still able to get some prayer space stuff happening in you sort of adapted yourself. So tell us a bit about where you did that first of all. What kind of school was it where you did this thing, which we'll talk about?
So we worked with a primary school called St Nick's and St Mary's, which is not too far away from us. It's a school that we've worked in before and run 3 or 4 prayer spaces there before, so they know us and they know what a prayer space is. So we kind of chatted with them and thought, how can we do something prayer spacey that will work in the current environment? So this was kind of November time, so when we were back into that second lockdown was when we were doing this.
And what was the plan that you came up with? What did you?
So I've got a little prop, Tim.
Go on.
So
here we go.
We came up with prayer space in a box. So this is what we came up with, and we thought initially that we would put these boxes together and send them into school and they would run the prayer space in a box. In actual fact, when we ran it, the school were very reluctant to have anything kind of physically from us, so it turned into we put 5 different prayer activities on a PowerPoint, so explained it all and sent that to them. Everything that is in this box is kind of easily accessible stuff that they should. So it's pens, it's paper, it's a zip for reconciliation zip, so they would have those on their coats or on their pencil cases or something. So it's stuff that they could grab hold of in school anyway. So, but the other thing that we did, we were talking with the school about how can we introduce it, or how can we make it easy for the school to run it. So we were saying we could kind of come in on a Zoom call and introduce it to the kids, or we could come in and physically be there and introduce it, or we could make a video. And they plumped for the video intro option because they were keen to have different classes running it at the same time. So they were saying that, if they could have a video of us introducing that, that would help.
So you produced a video as well then, and so you'd sent the idea to the school, and in the form of the PowerPoint, which had and it was, how many different activities was it?
5 different activities.
Yeah. And I love that you thought about using what was almost instantly to hand, what you could lay your hands on in school. That was really really helpful. And then how did it work in school? Because presumably you weren't there, so you've had to hear about it. But what did they do with it when they got all this stuff?
Exactly. It was very strange. From our point of view, we kind of put it together and sent it, and then we're like, oh, I wonder how it's going. They're doing it this week. I wonder what's happening. So each class teacher did it slightly differently, I think. So some the original plan, 5 activities, they were going to do 1 activity each day for a week. But then a few other things came up, and it extended into 2 weeks. So they ran it over a 2-week period. And some teachers thought, actually, it's a really nice way to start the day. So they would start with a prayer activity. Some did it kind of first thing after lunch to kind of get them in and calm them down and do something. And some did it just before the end of the school day. So it was really kind of flexible for the teachers to be able to use as and when they felt it best with their kids. I
imagine they found that quite helpful, that flexibility.
That was one of the bits of feedback that we had. I think it was obviously very different to normal prayer space. There was definitely less wow factor, but it was much more flexible and definitely easier for the school to run. I think it was lower key than it would have been normally, but and I think actually nice for the teachers to be a bit more involved in doing that sort of activity with their class, rather than handing their students over to the team to run.
Did you hear any feedback from any of the teachers? I mean, did you hear anything back from anybody? Did they talk to you about it afterwards?
A little bit. I don't know if anybody else finds this, but it's quite hard to get feedback sometimes, because it happens and then they move on to the next thing, and you're like, how did it go? So we did get a little bit of feedback. That one of the big things was they were saying it was great to have the introduction video. So we were quite mindful. We wanted to do as much as possible to make it really easy for the teacher to be able to just take it, plug it in, run it, and almost not have to do any prep beforehand. So so having that intro video, that was it was our faces, us saying, hello, do you remember us from last year? We're the prayer space team. Sorry, we can't come in this year, but here's how it's going to work. And so we then introduced it on the video. And I think that was nice as well, because it connected, even though we weren't there, it connected our team with the school again. And hopefully the students seeing that would have thought, oh yeah, I do remember those guys. Hopefully they can come back next year, and that kind of thing.
So they're still associated you with the prayer space?
I hope so. Yeah.
Activity. Did you? I mean, you might feedback being what it is, or sometimes isn't. Did you get any feedback from how the pupils had engaged with it, or?
Just that they loved it. So there wasn't a huge amount of feedback. We did get some pictures of some of the activities that they'd done. So it was nice to see some close-ups of the prayers that they'd written. So that was lovely. It was nice to see that they'd engaged with it well.
And any final bits of wisdom or advice that you would pass on to others as a result of that experience?
So I would say, from our team's point of view, we found it quite hard being so disconnected, from what was going on. I think if we did it again, we might see if we could maybe organise a Zoom call with a couple of the classes afterwards, and just not just to get feedback, although that is helpful, but to connect with them and to just kind of say what was your favourite activity, how did it go, what did you like, tell us about what you prayed for, to carry on that conversation with them and to connect with them a bit as well.
Great. Right. Lizzie, thank you very much. It's and well done for kind of recasting your prayer space into a PowerPoint and a bunch of ideas, but making it work so well. So now I think I'm going to hand back to Phil, who is going to introduce the third of our interviews. Phil.
Brilliant. Sorry, all kinds of things were popping up on my screen there telling me to unmute and such like. That was fantastic. Just on the feedback, Lizzie mentioned feedback there. I'm sure you found this as well, that gathering feedback at the end of a prayer space session or a follow-up it's valuable, of course, for us. It's great to hear a little bit of the feedback. It's great for the staff as well, because it gives them a little bit of a snapshot and insight into what's going on. But actually, the process of encouraging feedback is brilliant for the kids, for children and young people as well, because sometimes it actually takes someone asking them, how did you feel, for them to begin to process what they've experienced. Those skills of reflection aren't always like there to hand. And so that kind of conversation is really valuable, and also for them to hear one another. So I would always try and find ways to encourage feedback and reflection wherever we can. We're going to move on to our third interview now, which we pre-recorded at 10 o'clock this morning. It's weird because it's me interviewing Beth Rookwood. So Ebony, over to you, and here we go. So Beth, it's brilliant to have you with us this evening. Could you just tell us a little bit about where you're based, what your role is, and a bit about the schools that you've been working with particularly?
Yeah, sure. Lovely to be with you too. I'm Beth, and amongst other things, I work a day a week for a school as a chaplain. I live in Northumberland. The school is in Morpeth, and I work with sixth form only. I'm not employed by the school. It's not a kind of faith orientated school, but I've been there for about two and a bit years.
Northumberland, best county in the country, I would say, definitely. Most castles.
100%.
How long have you lived up in Northumberland, Beth?
I moved up to Newcastle in 2014, and then up to Northumberland a year later. So yeah, 5-6 years. Just love it. It's the best. It is the best.
Fantastic. So the sixth formers you're working with, you wanted to run a prayer space. Tell us a little bit about the thinking behind that, and what were the sort of restrictions that you faced in trying to run that?
Well, I've been in the school for, as I say, kind of a couple of years, 2.5 years. It might be that I'm the biggest limitation really to this unfolding, but I was really just waiting for that nudge from the Holy Spirit to just, when's the time for a prayer space? I'd seen prayer spaces in other schools, look super creative, absolutely love them, and just didn't quite get a settled sense of when it might be. I think because it's not a kind of faith-based school, if you like, I was just a bit nervous about going too quickly. I'd approached a school initially to see if I could go and work there, so it wasn't like invitation, so I've done a lot of well-being stuff. I've done kind of a little club at lunchtime around theology and philosophy debate and things, but I'd always hesitated a bit from a classic kind of Christian Union thing, but just trying to keep my ears open to what is God doing here, what does it look like to walk in step with the Holy Spirit here, to love the staff, love the students, and just kind of be around them as so many chaplains, that's kind of what you're there to do. But it was interesting, just over Christmas, I just kind of had that hard to describe other than that just niggle and that nudge about, I wonder what prayer might look like now that we're not in school. We've got a great room, but it is at the back of the sixth form centre, and you have to walk upstairs and go across everybody else's social area to get to it. But thinking actually, with being online, there's huge possibilities for people to opt in privately. They can keep cameras off, they can use a space as they like. So it just seems to be a really good time to try it and explore it.
So tell us what you did then. It's hard to imagine what a prayer space looks like that isn't in a classroom with, you know, a bubble tube and a gazebo and all of that kind of stuff. What did you do online that kind of reflects that creativity? How did it work?
Well, I guess the first step was to check that the head of sixth form was okay with me doing it, and having built a great relationship with the team, they were absolutely fine. Sent an invite out to the whole sixth form, and then they had to opt in, so they'd only get the link to the classroom kind of if they'd said it. So I kind of made sure the space was protected and it would be what it said it would be, which I just said to students, it's an online reflective creative space shaped from a Christian perspective on prayer, but everybody's welcome. So it felt important to say what it exactly would be. It would be really strict on half an hour, get permissions from everyone, and make it really safe. And then, I mean, I can share the screen with you. I'll show you.
That would be great. Yeah.
Super simple, really. It's basically, and you'll recognize it from your website, just a welcome slide. So it kind of looks nice. Students were invited, they could keep their cameras on or off, and they could speak or not if they wanted to. And I just created a playlist that played throughout the whole time. So our school uses Google, so I had to get my head around Google Meet, Google Classroom, how does that work? And then just lifting some of the activities that you would use in a space in person, in advance saying to students, you might want to have something with you that tastes really sweet. So I sent them a list in advance. You might want a candle. So this is something sweet. Opportunity, if they want to say out loud, they can turn their mic on and say it. Have something with you that's sour.
Yeah.
Then maybe again, if you want to say what that is, something with you to smell. So again, still trying to really capture the creativity that, you know, prayer space in schools have, but in a way that is accessible from everybody sitting on their desk in different rooms at home.
Amazing. And do you know that students found themselves a sweet thing and a sour thing and a smelly thing? Did they do that?
Yeah, they all did. So most of them, actually, it was interesting. I mean, they're quite Google Classroom savvy now. They've been doing it, but all of them kept their cameras on, I think, apart from one, and you could see them doing it. So tasting, and some of them said what had kind of come up for them, or they were thinking about wanting to pray. Some of them didn't. They were interacting with it.
So tell us a little bit more about the response of the students, because I've not heard of a prayer space kind of hosted in the way that you're describing online. I've recorded a couple of things for schools, and they've just sort of played them to the year 7s and year 8s back in their homes, and they've done prayer activities. But I've not heard of this kind of thing where it's been hosted online. What was the sort of response to you and to those prayer activities as you did it live?
Well, one of my prayers really is that students would really feel loved and welcomed, whoever they are, whatever they believe or don't, as part of the space. And I think what's been lovely is that's been some of the responses. A girl at the end of the first one actually stayed on at the end and just said, she was really teary, and she just said, I've been feeling so lonely, and this is the first time in months where I felt loved and part of something.
Wow.
Had another email afterwards from someone saying, I felt so included, thank you. Another one saying that was blissful at the end of a day of being on Google Classroom. So I think in a sense, just holding that space where I would just say welcome, and the music was very calming in the background. I would talk them through, but there was also quite a lot of silence throughout. So that was really, really lovely. They've all come back, so not a huge number, maybe 10. I don't know, I think a couple of them have church connections I know of, others don't, but they've come back. So you always take that as, oh well, they want to be there, they're choosing to be there. But I think just that sense of they want to be together in a space that is using a different part of their brain, opening up a little bit of their soul that maybe has just not being able to be open the rest of the day.
And even those just little phrases that you said, those students said, you know, I've been feeling lonely, I feel like I belong here, it's felt blissful. Those, you know, being a parent of a sixth former right now, those short phrases mean so much more now than they perhaps did a couple of years ago, a year ago, because the feeling of loneliness and anxiety is so strong for a lot of students, particularly sixth formers, I think, at the moment. So that is remarkable, isn't it? It's extraordinary. And they obviously felt safe with you, which is fascinating, because we often assume that it requires a room and a physical presence to evoke that sense of safety, but it clearly happened there. There was something magical happening for you with those students. It's amazing. What are your your thoughts moving forward? We've just got a couple more minutes now, but your thoughts moving forward. What are your hopes for continuing hosting places of prayer? Do you want to continue online? Are you looking forward to being physically present? We do a hybrid of both. What are your thoughts and reflections on this?
Yeah, really interesting, because I think, you know, we've only done it this last half term. We might only have another couple of weeks before students are back in school. I think I've actually really been surprised and amazed what's possible online. And I actually think, in terms of the depth, especially the interaction within this half an hour prayer space, I'm not sure we'd have had that in the setting that I'm in. So I am starting to wonder, what might it be like to have this, you know, at 6 p.m. I don't know, after the school day. I'll have a discussion with students around that. This school, the space that we've done has been 3:30 till 4, so kind of right after the school day. So, but you know, they'll be on buses and they'll be getting home and all that kind of stuff. So I think, in some sense, just waiting again to see what does Holy Spirit nudge us about and talk to students too. So real value in the online, and potentially it does open up stuff to do in school. People now know the words prayer spaces. A lovely thing was we created our own psalm after our last one, and I sent it round to the sixth form staff just to say, you know, I don't want to share this widely because I don't have student permission, but I'd love for you to see it. And they individually, every single one of them, all 8, sent back an individual response saying it had really touched them, it had made their day, it had kind of opened something up for them that was different to school day. So it does feel just that God just lovingly opening people and opportunities. So it's weird to say I don't know what will happen, but something will, because something is. So we'll see.
Amazing, Beth. That is absolutely amazing. Really encouraging as well. And I share that sense of anticipation. What next with you? Just in closing, is there anything you particularly want to encourage the people we've got participating? I don't know how many we've got right now, but there are colleagues who are children's workers, youth workers, school chaplains, mostly from the UK, some from outside the UK with us right now. Is there something that you particularly want to encourage your colleagues here with, or a little word of inspiration? Put you on the spot right now, Beth.
I think something I just really try and keep myself doing and thinking is keeping my heart open to loving these students. And you can do that online, whether you're looking them in the eye or you're looking at their name in the camera. And I think it's a sense of that love and that safety and that welcome that I think gives them the permission, the sense of safety to be able to open themselves up to you and hopefully to God too. So I was nervous about the tech. I was nervous about, is this going to work? But I think just that sense of if you have an open heart to love and let God's love shine through you, come through you to the students, then I think that's a brilliant way of opening new opportunities up.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Oh, absolutely brilliant, wasn't that? Really fascinating. So we've had 3 interviews. We've heard from Joanna in London talking about a lot about the students' emotion and grief, about doing something simple, and that can be powerful. Just the value of giving space for children and young people. And I think I would agree, I'm sure you would, that in the coming months, the creating of that kind of space is going to be incredibly valuable. And we heard from Lizzie presenting videos that were beamed back to children, and just the acknowledgement that creates a sense of continuity. We will be back. Here are our faces. We're still hosting this kind of stuff. And we're looking forward to seeing you again. And also her comment about feedback, gathering feedback. And then we've heard from Beth as well. I love the sweet, the sour, the smell activities, and just probably the surprising response of sixth form students there online. Last one, I'm going to pick on Maggie Patterson. Maggie, tell us a little bit about your group. What inspired you from the conversations?
There was a mixture of us with different experiences of prayer spaces, and we had the lovely lady from Malta in our group, which was thrilling.
Amazing
to know that prayer spaces are spreading, everywhere. It's amazing. So I was sharing with the others that I've been doing prayer spaces for quite a lot of years now, with an organisation as well as a chaplain, and now again as starting a new schools work organisation. So I've done them from littlies to the biggest ones, and found that prayer spaces work on every level at every age group. And the other thing that I found is that staff get a great deal out of the prayer spaces as well. And it's a big blessing to staff. But the thing that I'm working on currently, I was sharing with the others, is prayer spaces boxes in like a big tub. And then we're going to send in 6 or 7 zones in the box with either disposable items for each class, or wipe clean, like a globe, and everything wiped clean, everything anti-backable basically. And then I'll be sending in an introductory video and doing a Zoom call feedback session with every class that does the box.
Brilliant.
Drop it off at one end of the week, pick it up the next week. So very excited, lots of schools interested.
So good, Maggie, thank you so much for that. Back in the big room, I'm aware it's 8:30 right now. So quite a few people in the chat have mentioned that, asking questions about the DIY boxes and bags and all that kind of thing. Can I ask those of you that have been doing those kind of prayer spaces, could you do something for me? Could you please send a couple of paragraphs in an email describing what you've done, or a link to something that you've been doing if you've already put it online, and send it to Ebony. And what we'll do is we'll collate that, and then if it's okay with all of you, we'll send it out to you, so that you've got all of this feedback. We'll probably try and collate it into a story for the Prayer Space in Schools website as well. So please, could you do that? Share your content, the things that you've been creating. Just in closing, couple of things I want to tell you about. Last week, Prayer Spaces in Schools Germany launched as its own charity. Yay! That's great news. And we also heard that the very first prayer space in a school in Switzerland is going to take place in 2 weeks' time. So if you want to add that to your prayer list, that would be great, because the first prayer space is very often a catalyst for lots more. So please pray for Switzerland at the moment. The other bit of news, just to let you know as well, we mentioned this a month ago, is we're well on the way with the redesign for the new Prayer Spaces in Schools website, which should launch in the middle of April. It will look lovely and clean and colourful, and every prayer activity will have been redesigned. We've got a new format that we want to put them out in as well. So just want to let you know about that. Middle of April, we're going to launch that. Final thing to say, final two things. This workshop will go online, go on YouTube in a few days' time, once Ebony's had a chance to process it and edit it and remove anything that I've said that was wrong. We'll get that onto YouTube, and then the next date is going to be on Monday the 22nd of March. So if you want to pop that in your diaries as well, the next Prayer Spaces session. We've got a few ideas about the theme for that. We just need to finalise that, but it will be excellent. Hope you've enjoyed tonight. Hope it's been of use to you. Thank you so much to our interviewees, to Tim for helping host, and definitely, perhaps we can just all unmute for a moment, and a little round of applause to Ebony, who's dealt with all the techie stuff tonight. So real splattering of applause for the wonderful Ebony. Now, Ebony had a great idea for how we could end, because I was terrible at ending it last time. So what we're going to do to avoid the awkwardness of people gradually drifting off is what we're all going to do is unmute ourselves again, and I'm going to count to 3, and then we're all going to say goodbye to one another, and then Ebony is going to shut the room. So it's all gone. So I hope that's okay. So if everyone can unmute themselves for a moment now, and then on a count of 3, let's all just say goodbye in a cheerful, loving way. And then Ebony is going to say goodbye. So 1, 2, 3.
Thank you.